Let's delve through the international papers now. We're going to start off in Cyprus. International papers continuing, of course, to react to the bailout there, aren't they, Flo?
That's right. We're going to start by a cartoon in the International Herald Tribune, which shows just how much things have changed for Cyprus in just the last couple of weeks. You see a depiction of a bank there. On the outside at first, the before says money wash, and then the after on the right there says haircut. So things have changed quite drastically. The Wall Street Journal points out that the Cyprus bailout has actually trained the spotlight onto other small Euro nations with huge financial centers, because the question is, could they be next? Could they be in danger as well? And the two main countries in the spotlight are Luxembourg and Malta. And there's an interesting graphic in the Wall Street Journal today, which shows bank assets as a share to GDP. And you can see at the very top there is Luxembourg. And it's way, way, way ahead of all the other countries. Right after it's Malta. And then there's, at the very bottom, is actually the United States. But as you can see, Luxembourg has, the assets of its banking system are worth 22 times its annual economic output.
That's quite incredible, isn't it, seeing those figures? Let's move on to another story. Brazil, this is. Domestic workers being given equal rights.
That's right. Now, this is in O Globo, which is a Brazilian paper, and it points out that for the very first time, the Brazilian Senate has voted in a new law that gives domestic servants the same rights as other workers. For instance, they're now entitled to overtime. Now, a lot of people are reacting to this as a revolution in Brazil because there are an estimated 7 million housemaids and cooks, and nearly all of them are women. And in fact, O Globo has reactions to this law. For instance, you see a photo there of a woman named Francisca Martins, 36-year-old maid. She's posing there with her employers. She says it will be better. Maids are trustworthy people. They deserve more improvements, and it's good for both sides, the employee and the employer. But what's interesting about this story coming out of Brazil is that it comes at a time when foreign maids in Hong Kong were actually denied rights, and you can read about this in The Economist. Now, a high court in Hong Kong ruled that foreign domestic workers are not eligible to apply for permanent residency in the Chinese territory. So this really comes as a slap in the face to the 300,000 foreign maids who are mainly from the Philippines and Indonesia who are working in Hong Kong and who make up 8% of the city's workforce. Critics say that this is really unfair because other expats, for instance, who work in the financial sector, they're allowed to apply for permanent residency after only 7 years in Hong Kong. And so people say that this really amounts to ethnic discrimination.
Now, more discrimination, if you think of it along those lines. The gay marriage debate in the US continuing to get a lot of attention in the international press.
That's right. And there's a really interesting article in Slate today that looks at the language and the arguments that are being used by the anti-gay marriage camp. And it points out that, well, they're very similar arguments to those that were used back in 1967 during the landmark Loving versus Virginia trial, which struck down interracial marriage bans. And you see a photo there of Mr. Loving. This article points out that the parallels are very striking between the two cases because at the time, people against interracial marriage said that they were really just thinking about children. They said that they, according to very controversial studies, interracial couples were bad parents, they were prone to divorce, they placed undue psychological stress on their children. If you look at what the anti-gay marriage people are saying, well, they're also using the child card. And they're also quoting very controversial studies that say being raised by homosexual couples is harmful to the child. And actually, we've been seeing a lot of photos about protesters outside the Supreme Court, and I pulled out one here where you see an interracial couple that says, not long ago, our marriage was illegal. Be on the right side of history.
Interesting comparisons there anyway. Now, The Independent, they've got an article about Google going back to take photos of Fukushima. Of course, it's nearly 2 years after the deadly earthquake there, isn't it? Tsunami and nuclear meltdown there. Some fascinating pictures, aren't there?
That's right. The Street View cars are back. Now, they've been touring this forbidden zone after getting permission, and we can take a closer look at what they found. They found these haunting landscapes with that are just full of these abandoned cars, homes that are crumbling, etc. Basically a ghost town that is gradually being reclaimed by nature. You can also see some photos of random ships lying around in fields after the tsunami put them there. Basically, residents who had to flee say they're actually quite excited to see these photos because they're curious to see what the city they left behind looks like now.
Flo, thank you very much. That's Florence VILLEMINOT looking through the international papers here on France 24. Well, that's all from me. More, of course, coming up very shortly. The latest on Cyprus and the health of Nelson Mandela with Cyril Vanier. He'll be here after the break. Stay with us if you can.